Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. 2, because I'm a fan of punk music. And 3, it's just more fun, right? Anyway, if this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. And please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. Anyway, that's enough from me right now. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Nick Mizovitz, who is the customer success manager of Pura Vida bracelets. Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful, Adrian. How are you? Thanks for asking.
I am very well. Just want to point of note. Did I pronounce your second name correctly?
You did. Yeah, that was fantastic.
Thank you very much. I'm apparently better than his grandmother.
Yes.
So, Nick, can you tell us a bit about yourself and also the work that you do?
Yeah, of course. My name is Nick Mezowitz, obviously, as you so eloquently said. I'm the customer success manager at Pura Vida Bracelets. I essentially, when I signed on, I was in charge of handling everything that was like support related. And now it's kind of expanded to where anytime I hear the customer involved or anything to where the customer is mentioned, I kind of want to put my hands in that fire, for lack of a better term, just to make sure that we have a really cohesive experience.
Cool. Now, you work for a company called Pura Vida Bracelets, and they have a pretty cool sort of like backstory about what they do. And because people might go like, bracelets? Meh. Got a bracelets? Meh. You know, actually, but you're actually doing, there's a bigger story to what you do rather than just being a purveyor of kind of bracelets. So can you tell me a bit about that and how kind of like, a bit about Pura Vida Bracelets and how it came about and kind of like what you're there to do and all that sort of stuff?
Of course. I'll tell you this much. When I was interviewing with Pura Vida, their story was one of the reasons why it was such an easy yes for me when I got the offer.
Okay.
So about 10 years ago, our co-founders, Paul and Griffin, were on a surf trip to Costa Rica after college graduation. They were kind of living the life, surfing and just kind of hanging out in the beach, and they fell in love with Costa Rica and this lifestyle, which is like called Pura Vida. Pura Vida, translated in Spanish, means pure life. And
cool.
One of the days that during their trip, they saw these two artisans, Jorge and Joaquin, and they saw them making these bracelets on the side of the road. They looked at how colorful and bright they were, and they were like, this is the perfect example of Pura Vida. They started to talk with them. They ended up going back to their apartment, and they saw that Jorge and Joaquin and their entire family shared a one-bedroom apartment. Wow. And instantly, Paul and Griffin were like, we need to do something to help to the best of our ability. What can we do? And they decided, hey, we're going to buy 400 bracelets from you guys, and we're just going to go from there.
Nice.
So that was the first step. And granted, this was give or take about 10 years ago. So they got back to San Diego. They put them in a little boutique, and within a few days, it sold out completely.
Right.
And they were just flabbergasted. They were like, these little string friendship bracelets mean a lot more to people than just an accessory to wear.
Right.
So they were like, we got to go back. So now, fast forward 10 years later, we have over 800 artisans that we support worldwide, which is phenomenal and so cool. We have a really extensive charity collection. I think right now we work with anywhere from like 30 to 40 charities, which is really cool. And a direct proceed of the purchase goes directly to that foundation that we work with. We have jewelry, we have anklets, we've done bags before. Like, it's just expanding so much, and we just have such rabid fans. It's such a cool company and story.
Nice. It's doing something that kind of like that's got proper links and that matters. That's ace. Um,
100%.
but Pure Vita bracelets are also known for their great service, or the great customer service that they give to your clients. And this is actually, and it's all ramped up since you joined as customer success manager back in 2018. Now, I wanted to come. We've talked about this, and I wanted to just to have you on the show and just talk about some of the stuff that you've done, just to add a little bit of color around that, just to get your take on it, because we've got a broad and varied audience, and some people will be service professionals, some people will be in support departments, some people will be in success and things. So I just wanted to dig around with some of those things, if I may.
No, of course, please.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, you told me that you decreased average email response time, but at the same time you turned off live chat, and I was like, oh, what?
Yeah.
I mean, can you explain kind of like how and kind of like why you've done that sort of thing?
I'll be completely honest with you. I hated live chat when I first started working at Pure Vita. Even before I came in, the last company I worked at, we were a global support company. We had a white label app builder that allowed people to make and publish applications. And we just did email and phone support. And my boss, who's now my mentor, she was like, hey, if you want to be good, look at Amex. It's phones and it's email, and they're the best in the world at it. So stick to that and you should be good.
Right.
When I came over to Pure Vita, they were like, yeah, chat's really important to us. Like, it's really great that we get to interact with people. And I was like, it's October 1st. We have T-minus 60 days before Black Friday. I've never done Black Friday before, but I've heard the horror stories.
Yeah.
So let me look at the team.
Yes.
So we had about, I want to say it was like 15 people, and they had been in the process of doing hiring for the holidays. And I think we ended up with like 23 is what we were at for that first time. Yeah, for that first year.
Right.
So I was like, okay, let me look at everybody. Let me kind of see what they've done. Let me look historically. So I started looking at like arrival patterns. I looked at everything, and I was like, we don't have enough people to staff chat. We don't have enough people to staff email. We don't have enough people to staff phones,
right,
all at the same time.
Yes.
Let's focus on email and phones, because you would figure that, hey, everybody's comfortable with email. And if we ignore our like younger demographic, we tend to see a lot of people who are like parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles who buy for their nieces, nephews, sons, daughters, whoever it may be, their friends. So I was like, let's keep phones, let's keep email. Let's turn chat off. Let's revisit it in January of the following year, and we'll kind of see what we can do. So that's kind of what I did.
The interesting thing about it, because I'm always interested in hearing stories of when people turned things off, and it's like made it a difficult choice of going, I'm going to turn it off because it doesn't work. We can't resource it well enough. Or you've got this idea that, I've got this idea that it's best to be great at a few things rather than average at a lot.
Correct. I 100% agree with you. And that's one of the reasons why I turned it off. I was like, well, right now we had one person who was rotating because we only had like one license available for chat. So we had one person who was answering chat for like 4 hours, and then somebody else would come in and they would rotate 5 days a week. And I was like, we're missing like 80% of our chats, right? And they go, no. And I go, yeah, we're dropping a ton. At the same time, I found out that our existing phone provider, we were dropping 80% of our calls. So our abandonment rate was like 80 to 85%. Wow. And I was like, guys, this isn't good. Like, we're missing all these conversations. So any numbers I have now, throw them out the window. They don't mean anything. Sure. Because I have no idea what normal is. So, at that point, I looked at an arrival pattern study for 5 years worth of incoming, conversations. Like, what channel were they reaching out to? Why were they reaching out? And let's kind of look at it on a 24-hour scale, and let's see what we can do. And, at that point, our email average response time was like 33 hours, which I was like, eek, that's a day and a half. Yeah. So I don't know very many people who have the patience for that. Now, albeit that doesn't seem like a lot of time. And, if you look at the scope of the world, but, a day and a half for somebody who's stoked about your product is a really long time.
Sure.
So I was like, well, we're missing all of these conversations after 5 o'clock. We have enough that comes in to where we can staff it. Let's take these 23 people. Let's build out a 24/7 schedule for email, and let's see what we can do. And within, I think, 2 weeks, within 2 full weeks, I had things down to an average of 4 hours for a response time. And then for the last 2 weeks of October, we were averaging about 45 minutes.
Nice.
Which I thought was phenomenal.
That's cool. And so I know that you've kind of, you've chat off live chat, but are your teams organized around, so your teams are organized around channels, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, we, for that first Black Friday, we had, I had hybrid agents. So everybody worked phones and emails. And that didn't end up all that great because we had so many people who were calling in, we could never get the emails, and you know, that creates an uneven distribution of work as well as like stress levels. So I was like, hey, okay, January 1st, let's redo everything. So we ended up organizing people in channels. We turned chat back on, and we've never been happier. It's such an efficient way to kind of like organize how your people and your team and your customers are interacting. It's also a lot easier to trend things at an individual channel level than it is just to say, hey, broad sweep, what's going on? Where I can go to phones and be like, hey, what's happening here?
Okay.
And they know ahead of time that, hey, email's going to see this, or chat is like, hey, email, phones, be prepared.
Okay. So you've turned chat on. You turned chat on back in the January after you got past the Black Friday and busy time.
Yeah, I think January 15th of 2019 was our official live chat launch date, and it's been our best channel ever since.
Okay. And so you find that people perform better if they specialize, but I mean, do people kind of then rotate around teams to give you redundancy, as it were, and to give them some variety, or how does that work?
I leave it up to my team. I have a lot of faith in them, and if they want to rotate and switch, I'm always happy to accommodate that as long as like the numbers make sense from moving one body to another.
Right.
But they were pretty adamant because I asked them, I go, what do you guys want to do? Do you guys want to rotate channels? Because some of them weren't all that comfortable with talking on the phone. And I was like, okay, no worries. Like, you got to be a superstar to be on the phone. No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
That's okay. But I go, if you want to switch between email and live chat, and they're like, you know what? We like the channels. And it's funny, during the interview process, I'll get a lot of people who will be like, hey, I want to work email. Is that okay? Or, hey, I really want to be one of your voice agents. How can I do that?
Right.
So it's a really interesting industry in that respect, where a lot of people want to come in and specialize in one thing. Now, we don't exclude them from being able to switch over, but I do make sure that our channel leads, the people who like are in charge of that channel, do communicate and talk with the other channel leads and make sure that, hey, are we sharing the same information? Is the way that we talk to our customers the same, or at least on brand? And that's gone really well for us.
Okay, no, that's cool. I just kind of wanted to know, because it's like sometimes around when it comes to kind of planning, kind of resources against them, people against demand and things. I just wanted to understand kind of how that kind of works, and can people pick and choose their, their channels.
Totally.
But I also know that you kind of you changed how you refer to your reps. Before they were like customer service reps, normal sort of stuff, and now you can now call them customer advocates now. So I'm thinking, I like the sound of that, but I also know that that's wallpaper, kind of like for many organizations. And so what I wanted to know is that just a name change, or what has actually happened in practice?
It was a complete mindset change. I think in like March and April, we were starting to see like normal volumes come in terms of support. And, we were getting CSATs back and NPS reviews. And I was like, you know what? I feel like we're just missing something. And I was sitting there talking with the team, and they were like, what if we get our agents more engaged? And I go, what do you guys need? And they said, well, we want to be the person that the customer thinks is not the problem. Right. And I go, what do you mean by that? Now, a month before, I had given them all the book, A Complaint is a Gift, which, by the way, is a fantastic read if nobody's ever read it before.
Yeah, it's a great book.
It's life-changing, honestly. I read it like 4 years ago, and I use it to this day. You should see my copy. It's insane.
Mm.
But there's a section in there where it talks about when the customer reaches out, they see the company and the problem is married. But in reality, it's the customer and the company who are married to attack the problem. And that had resonated with them. And I was like, okay, well, what do you guys want to do about that? And they go, well, we want to be something that people can reach out and know that, hey, when they reach out, we're going to take care of them. And I said, let's do it. We're going to make it a secret mission. Nobody's going to know about it. And we're going to have a little fun with it. So we ended up coming up with the transition from customer service representatives to customer advocates. For the whole month of April, we had meetings about lesson plans. And in May, we launched a month-long continuing education program that ended in a graduation. And it took our agents from normal support reps to full-on advocates for our customers. And ever since then, we've seen a significant increase in our general CSAT, a big increase in our NPS as well from a company standpoint. And people tend to call out more that like, oh my gosh, the service was wonderful. You guys were so great. You were attentive. You really understood what I was saying. And, you know, for somebody who has an outsourced team, that's a big compliment because most of the time you don't get that at face value.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask you about how much of your team is in-house or how much is outsourced, because sometimes there's an assumption that if you outsource something, then it's done for almost done on cost basis in many ways, and then actually you trade off quality. But actually, you've not found that. I mean, how have you managed to achieve that if much of your team is outsourced? Is that about picking the right sort of people, or what's been kind of central to that?
It's 100% the right people. Funny story. So the last company I was at, we had a support team and we used, it was one of those really popular, like they stick with you, they kind of do some other things, but they're generally your agent. We use them for like night shift, but you know, our 8 to 5 was our main people.
Right.
When I came to Pure Vita, I was like, okay, I'm inheriting an offshore team because we were 100% outsourced at that point.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I know how to deal with it. I know how to handle it. I go, let's kind of get to know these people. And I fell in love with them within weeks.
Right.
Like these people care so much and they just want everybody to be happy when they reach out. And, you know, that sometimes is our crux, but at the same time, it's something that I don't find a lot locally. I mean, don't get me wrong, San Diego and the surrounding areas flush with talent, but you have to find the right people to come in and carry that mindset.
Sure.
I think you would probably agree with this. The general shelf life of a customer service rep's about a year. You know, after 12 months, they want more.
Yeah.
And they want something, or they don't want to deal with that same customer. Or once you've gone through that yearly cycle, you kind of see the ups and the downs and you know what to expect, but you also dread what's coming. So as a support rep, and I felt that way before, and I was kind of like, okay, I want to move on. I want to manage more. I want to do something, you know, bigger than just, you know, sit here and answer questions all day. I actually found that, you know, our team, they just loved what they did. And they just wanted to make people happy. And I was like, you don't find that here at face value. It takes a lot to get them there. So I was like, okay, the mindset's right. Let's start working with the tools that we have and let's give them better tools for their toolbox.
Cool.
Right now, we're still, a majority of our team is outsourced, which I'm so thrilled with. And then I have one person who works with me in office and she runs our social channels. So she handles all of our like Facebook comments and ad comments, and then most of our Instagram DMs that are like customer support related. And she's absolutely wonderful. And I've just been really lucky that the talent's been there for us across the board.
Cool. And so, you know, here's I guess the other thing that, you know, you talk about, I like the idea that you kind of like, you choose to shut channels down, because there is a tendency to always be adding channels. So what other channels are you going to be adding in the future? And in the quest of achieving simplicity, at the same time, what other channels are going to be shutting down, do you think?
That's a great question.
Let me kind of, before you kind of jump in, the context behind that is like, if people can believe that simplicity, striving for simplicity is a good thing, then I always kind of challenge people to when they agree with that, to say, so if you agree that simplicity is a good thing, if you're going to add a channel, then you have to be taking at least one other channel away to be in line with your goal for achieving simplicity. So I just wanted to ask you, so which kind of channels are you thinking about killing, Nick?
None of them. None of them, Adrian, believe it or not. So my mindset with, kind of opening and, archiving channels. I don't want to say killing, but I'll say archiving, because that's kind of what you do. You put it on the shelf, you make it less available, and then eventually your customers learn that, hey, these are the other channels that I can communicate with them quickly.
Sure.
Whatever we think as a support team is always wrong. Whenever our customers reach out to us, regardless of what channel it is, those are channels we have to focus on. Us being a very prominent social company, whether or not it's from like our Instagram, our Twitter, our TikTok, our Facebook, whatever it may be, we need to rely on those avenues to be able to reach out to our customers. Because if our customer reaches out to us on Twitter, you bet your butt, I'm getting that tweet and I'm looking at it and I'm having my team look into it. So if we just focus on the three core channels, right? Because I think just about everybody in the industry has these to some degree: email, phones, and chat. Right now, about 75% of our incoming volume is email.
Right.
So the rest is split pretty much between chat and phone, with phone being lower in recent months, where chat's getting a little bit more of that real estate.
Right.
So if I look at that trend, we just opened up, last March, we launched our EU website for the European Union, Africa, and the Middle East. And then just this week we just launched our Canada site, which will handle all of like Canada and North America, which is wonderful. So with that being said, we're starting to become more global. We have plans to launch a warehouse in China, and eventually a website to handle most of Asia and the South Pacific as well, because we have a really big following over there too.
Right.
So the more I see us go global, the more I go, well, we need to talk to people in a way that globally fits. Most people outside of the US don't use the phone to reach out to people.
Right.
I.e. like a phone call, right? So it's like if we're talking like Europe, Australia, Asia, they're going to use like WhatsApp, they're going to use WeChat, they're going to use those avenues, and email to communicate with people. And those are two really big areas. So in my mind, the more global we become, the more we need to kind of shift our focus there to be able to take in the majority of the people, not the minority. Because at the end of the day, yes, our US volume is our biggest volume, but once that global volume starts to really like scale and grow, which it has been, we're going to start to see a ton of volume come from everywhere outside of the US. So in my mind, SMS and just general like messaging apps was like the next channel I wanted to get into. I thought it was a really easy transition because I can just train people on chat and then they just change over to SMS.
Yeah.
Messaging, and it's 100% the exact same thing, same brand messaging, same time turnarounds, it's live, that's what people expect. So I was like, okay, that's easy. And that's my big thing, and that was what I wanted to do pre-COVID-19.
Well, now you've kind of like mentioned it, we have to talk about it.
It's the elephant in the room.
Exactly. I mean, so you've got everybody's in, we call it lockdown, you guys call it kind of shelter in place. I'm guessing that you've moved everything to remote working. I mean, I guess your outsourcer has had to do the same thing as well. I mean, how things changed for you guys?
Oh man, so about 3 weeks ago, so we had already been sheltered in home for like 2 weeks, and then our outsource company reached out to me and they're like, hey, we're going to get ahead of the announcement. We don't know that it's coming, but we do know that it's going to happen eventually. So we're going to transition everybody over. And I was like, okay, let's talk devices, let's talk internet availability, let's talk about it all. And they go, our IT team is handling all of it. They're going to make sure that everybody's internet is operating at a speed that makes sense across the board and will not interrupt your ability to have them work. They also gave everybody who worked for them a promotion that if they upgraded their internet or bought internet for their home, because some of them didn't have it, they said, we'll give you a stipend.
Right.
And kind of like a little spiff for buying it. So I was like, hey guys, take advantage of it. Why
Yeah.
not? It's free money that they're giving you. Take it.
And so where are they based?
They're all in the Philippines.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so how have you found that kind of, that sort of change, that kind of change to this kind of a whole system of everybody's remote sort of now?
Yeah. It hasn't really changed, believe it or not. We did, I kind of knew like 3 or 4 days before that we were going to switch over. So I started to meet with like my operations team over in the Philippines. And I just started to have the conversation with them about, okay, what policies do we want to enforce at work from home? Do we want to up our QA scores to make sure that we're maintaining the same level of just consistency and quality? Like, what do you guys want to do? And they said, well, okay, let's increase QA. Let's increase our CSAT KPIs because those are the two things that we largely measure that, like, hey, people are generally happy with us. And let's increase the amount of one-on-one coaching we get. I go, what do you guys mean? And they said, well, we want to meet with everybody on our teams, give or take like once a day.
Right.
And I said, wow. I go, that's wonderful. I go, I'm all in. Let's do it. Let's just make sure that it's not hampering you guys too much. And if you need to combine meetings and do them in groups, go ahead and do it. And they go, yeah, let's rock and roll with that. And it's been wonderful for us. We haven't seen a drop off in our consistency. If anything, our CSAT and our NPS have actually soared.
Awesome.
We were at like 83 out of 100 for our NPS, like most of the week. And our CSAT has been, and we use Stella Connect, which is a phenomenal system, which uses star rating. And we've been consistently in like 4.8 and 4.9 ever since we've done work from home. So it's been a really great success for us. And I think that's a credit to the organization that we partner with. And within a week, I think they were able to convert over 3,000 of their employees to work from home without any question.
Wow.
Which I thought was so cool. So they were built for these types of scenarios, and they really executed and provided us, the partners, a really great feeling that, hey, there's not going to be any service drop off, and we're going to be there for everything that you need.
And so I know that there's a bunch of people, like other sort of, service success support leaders that are going through this. Their hand has been forced, right? And you seems to have had a pretty smooth experience, from that. I mean, so can you, for the people that are listening that are in those sort of positions, what sort of things or what sort of tips, what sort of things have you learned, and what sort of tips would you give them, from your perspective and also from the perspective of your kind of outsourced kind of like partner, because it all seems to be quite seamless, because I'm pretty sure that some people are thinking, we're struggling with this.
No, I 100% agree with you. I know so many brands that have been struggling since the beginning of, shelter at home or whatever it was, or even with some of their teams. And, you and I kind of talked about this like a few weeks ago. We started hyper communicating the second we saw things start to go south.
Yeah.
When COVID-19 was like first announced, like way back in January, I was like, okay, guys, I'm going to send you some money for hand sanitizer and vitamin C. Let's just start prepping for everything. Let's ask if the custodial services can begin wiping down workstations both before and after shifts. If you guys touch like public services, go wash your hands. So we started a lot of that like hyper communication and that preparedness way before in January, because we were like, we don't know what's going to happen. We know it's bad. Italy at that point, I think, was beginning to talk about shutting down. And, we had to make the decision to just say, okay, let's get comfortable with what is happening now and moving forward. And then when the team got the shelter at home kind of protocol from the government, we said, okay, let's again hyper communicate and focus on that. And my biggest concerns were, I wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable. Now, when I say comfortable, that doesn't mean snacks and athleisure wear. It means, are they comfortable with their work environment?
Yeah.
Are you working off of a couch at a kitchen bar counter? Do you have a desk? Are they working from their bed? Is their routine something that ensures that they are successful, right? Are they still taking their breaks
Yeah.
in between, their shifts? And, are they remembering to go to lunch? Sometimes you forget when you're working from home that your computer is always on and it's there. And
Yeah.
sometimes you forget about it and you work through things and you're like, oh gosh, no, I need to go and sit, go outside for a walk as long as you can, like run errands during the day, go do a workout. Like, are you eating a lunch that is sustaining your body and your ability to communicate with people, or is it conking you out at like 2:30 in the afternoon and then you're needing a 5-hour energy? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
And what are their surroundings? I asked them, I did a survey back in like the beginning of February, and I said, okay, how many of you live with family? How many of you live with extended family? And how many of you live alone or with roommates?
Yeah.
And that kind of helped us understand and plan ahead. Now, granted, everything we've done has been preventative. In terms of what we've done now, we created this ideal work environment and we increased the number of meetings that we had with each other.
Right.
So to go with that hyper communication theme, like not just at the company level, which has been really nice because, we don't get to walk across and, knock on somebody's door or wave at them at their office, but, the ability to sit down with my team, open up a Zoom link and just say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's go over that. Hey, I want to talk with email today. Hey, let's talk with chat. Hey, let's talk with phone. Let's talk about whatever we need to. And that's been really effective for us. And, I'm really big on people and humans.
Yes.
And if I can understand that, hey, this is stressful for me, it's stressful for you, I know that I need to have empathy for that. Hey, if somebody's scores are declining and their effectiveness isn't to where we kind of expect it to be, let's sit down and chat.
Sure.
Is everything okay? Hey, no, my son's having a really hard time because, we're home and he just doesn't know what to do. So he just thinks I get to hang out with dad and mom all the time.
Yeah.
And I go, most of my team work their night shift from like 11 in the evening to 8 in the morning. And I go, aren't they trying to sleep? And they go, yeah, and that's part of the problem. They're sleeping during the day and they're hanging out with mom and dad at night. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about things that have worked. Let me do some internet research. Let me try some things to help you.
Yeah.
And we've had those types of communications and conversations consistently for the past 3 weeks, and that's been really effective for us.
I think that's really cool because I think there is some big assumptions that get made around the whole work from home idea. Yep. And, if you think about it, it's like a WFH. Well, there's a lot of assumptions around home, the H bit, and the kind of the appropriateness of the W bit to kind of fit into the H bit, if you know what I mean. And then it's like you've got right sort of space, kind of it's the right sort of environment, with whether that's physically or emotionally, and all sorts of other dimensions. And that's kind of throwing out some major kind of challenges, I think, for some people. But I love the fact that you've kind of got ahead of it and being able to work with your partners to be able to kind of figure that out and kind of like work them through some of the others, so some of the maybe knotty situations that they find themselves in, to make it kind of work for them and also for yourselves.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I learned a long time ago that there's like, I don't remember what all 7 things are, but there's like 7 things you need to know to be a really good manager of people. And it's like their significant other, whether or not they have pets, what their living situation is like, what they do for their like extracurriculars, what their family's like. And then there's always 2 more things that I always forget.
Right.
But if you start to understand those things, you kind of understand who you're working with and how you're working with them. And that allows you to get the best out of them. For example, on Sundays and Mondays, my wife is home because those are her days off. So on Mondays, like I wake up and my 7 a.m. conference call, I'm really quiet.
Right.
Because I don't want to wake her up. My office is literally right outside of our bedroom and I'm a very loud person. So I have to kind of balance that. And then during the day, she's like, come hang out with me. And I'm like, I can't. I love you, but I'm working. And I'm like, if I'm going through that, like who else? Like
Yeah,
the other day we were getting ready to go to the grocery store, and now I'm not immune compromised, but I have asthma. So I'm one of those people who I'm taking extra precaution. I don't need to catch anything. San Diego's
sure.
actually been really good with sheltering from home, and people are very respectful, but there's a couple of people who just don't care. And
Yeah,
that creates anxiety and nerves. And, you start to get ready to go to the grocery store and you're like, I kind of have to like psych myself up like I'm going to play a sports match. Like,
mm,
what am I going to do? And you have to deal with those emotions. And,
sure.
I found that just by doing it myself, like my team had the same concerns and the same feelings.
Yeah,
And we're going to be instituting, which I'm really happy about. I haven't told the team yet because I haven't met with them today because I was, kind of getting ready for everything with you. And we're going to start opening up just a hour-long Zoom session during lunch that if anybody wants to hop on and chat and eat together, that's what we're going to do.
yeah.
And just to give people some face time, just to give people some comfort and maybe laugh at a couple jokes that they could share publicly instead of in their chats or whatever it may be. So.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's this situation won't last forever. Some people think
Yeah,
it will fundamentally kind of change everything. I will wait and see, I think.
100%. No, I completely agree with you. I read something somewhere that most of the tech companies in like San Francisco and Silicon Valley, they're getting so used to running lean and automating systems that they didn't think they could automate before, that it's changing the landscape of the worker and the job market.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to kind of see what happens, future wise with everything that's going on and how COVID kind of affects everything. We were kind of talking earlier.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Adrian. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think there's a lot of people, my sense is that there's a lot of people going, oh, this is a moment and we can consider this and consider that. And that's kind of all fair enough. But I think there's also a part of me that says, I don't think it's as simple as that.
Agreed.
And that we are social creatures, and video conferencing can go far into helping us kind of stay connected. But it's kind of like, it's something else to sit next to somebody or to sit in the same room as somebody, because we still are these social kind of beings, and physical contact and proximity is something that we, I think, abandon at our peril. And I think that's just we sometimes need to kind of just not rush into new solutions. I think we have to respond quickly, but not necessarily rush into things, because we've got to be careful. We won't recognize what we've kind of like lost until we actually start missing it.
I could not agree with you more. And, I'm kind of getting like a little bit emotional thinking about it, but you know what I miss the most, Adrian? I miss saying good morning to my coworkers as they come into the office.
Yeah.
I'm generally like one of the first ones in there, or just it's me and like a few others, but like as people come in, being able to say good morning to somebody, there's something so socially like gratifying about that. Or like hearing laughter in the office, or like asking the person you sit next to, like, hey, what do you want to do for lunch today? Like those are such simple things when you think about it, and you're like, well, you could do the same thing online. And I'm like, no, you can't. There's something so different about hearing and experiencing those things in person. And I'm actually really excited about what that's going to mean for the future, because I think people are going to be, there's been that rise of everybody's on their phones and they're spending 70% of their world on their device and 30% actually in the world. I think that number is going to shift. And I think we're going to start to see people leave their phones at home, go out and do things, get away from their screens, and start to be more present, which I think is going to be such a great thing for humanity in general.
Well, I think so. And, people have been kind of talking about the phone as dead for the longest time. But I think what's actually kind of showing up is that the phone, and particularly the video phone, is well and truly alive.
Yep.
And people started to, because when you get pushed into a crisis situation, you start to respond or rather react, because in terms of in a visceral kind of manner. You're like, I don't want to text somebody, I want to talk to them.
Yep.
Or I want to see them
Yep.
and talk to them.
Yeah.
And that's this kind of visceral, kind of emotional kind of like response. And I think that's kind of it, showing kind of a lot of people kind of like, the value of these things. But anyway, we can spend hours talking about this. Let's stop. But I think there's some big challenges, some big questions about how we kind of like how we learn out of this and how we can make changes. But what I wanted to also say is that you've been through a lot of changes. You've got some fantastic kind of like numbers, and do some good things. But I always like to kind of boil it down to kind of like one or two things, actionable things that I think that people can do. But so if I would say to you, somebody's listening into this or reading the highlights and they want to improve their service or experience that they deliver to their customers, and maybe also their employees, what would be your best advice, Nick?
I really liked this question for a number of reasons, and I kind of touched upon it earlier. I'm really big just on humans, and I do everything I can to spoil my team.
Right.
It doesn't matter what it is. Like if I can buy Starbucks for them, I'm going to buy Starbucks for them. If I can get donuts brought in before shift, I'm going to do that. International Women's Day, all my lovely ladies who work for me, which is like 90% of my team, they all had roses waiting for them when they walked in.
Right.
So like, find those moments and make those memories. My mentor was really big on like culture, and that's a big thing that we talk about all day long at Pure Vita, especially for support. And I said, this is our culture. We are fun, we are happy, we are excited to make people smile. And that mantra has made it so much easier for us. So find what makes your team happy and do it tenfold, and do it every day, and find new things to make them happy. Because when you put a smile on their face, guaranteed that's going to translate to the next time they talk to a customer, regardless of how that communication goes.
Nice. So, so building on that, kind of like looking forward, I mean, give me a view on kind of what you think the future service looks like and what some of the big challenges are ahead that we need to be kind of like steeling ourselves for.
Yeah, I still think mobile is the place to be. I think that real estate is still so important, and we touched upon it a few moments ago. I think that somebody's cell phone is still the best real estate we could ever get.
Right.
So being able to communicate and to work with people in that way is the best. I mean, look at the rise of TikTok. I mean, if we want to talk about something that's just come out of nowhere and all of a sudden is a phenomenon, TikTok is. Look at all the brands and the companies who are trying to build a fan base, trying to get involved because of this social channel that now has opened up. Yeah. So I mean, I see many more TikToks here in the future, because 3 to 5 years ago we were talking about the same thing for Instagram.
Yeah, that's true. Weren't we talking about Snapchat before that, and then Snapchat just sort of went and hid in a bush somewhere?
It did, yeah.
As did things like Tumblr wild. And all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I still believe the future is mobile. I think we need to be ready to engage consumers at a mobile level. And you have to look at like the giants for that, like Facebook, Amazon. But at the same time, I think you need to find a way to carve out your own niche, and work with your demographic and work with your customer and your fan base, and reach out to them in areas that make sense for you. For us, it's social. It's always going to be social, and we love being in that space. For others, it may be different.
Nice. So, Nate, one final thing that I wanted to ask before I kind of let you get back to the day job is that, so I've been doing this piece of sort of ongoing sort of social research around, the book that I published last year which is called Punk CX, and I've been playing some word association kind of games, word or brand association games with people, and as a way of crowdsourcing like this range of words to try and describe how broad the interpretation of being more punk in your approach to CX would be. So if I was to say to you, what one or two words would you say if I said a punk approach to CX? You would say
individual. And I'm a bit of a nerd. So I was like, okay, what's the origin of punk? Where did it come from? And you look it up in the dictionary, like, okay, well, let's transition to punk rock, right? Because that's really where punk became like something that people could tangibly feel.
Yeah.
And punk rock was all about the anti-establishment ideals and the promotion of individual freedom. So I'm going to take a different spin. And I'm going to say that treating every individual like they're a rock star is the punk approach to customer experience.
Nice. And what sort of company or brand do you think epitomizes that sort of approach?
Oh, man. I think Tesla in that space is so cool. If you look at what Musk has done from Tesla, SpaceX, and the Boring Company, you know, they've changed the way that like industries and individuals and companies look at how they're treated. It's kind of funny because SpaceX and the Boring Company, you wouldn't think, oh, those are really like heavy, like customer, like experience based. And I'm like, no, that's the entirety of why their business exists. Musk wants to have us live on Mars. He wants people to be able to use space travel as a way to easily navigate, you know, the surrounding area outside of Earth. And you look at Tesla, I mean, I can't leave San Diego without seeing a Tesla on every street that I drive by.
Right.
The running joke is one day I'm going to take my Tesla using the Boring Tunnel road to get to the launch zone for my trip to Mars. And if you just look at that, it's wild. I mean, even purchasing a Tesla, you don't go into a dealership.
Yeah.
You literally go online and everything's done online. There is nobody that you need to talk to. Everything's email and chat, and that's it. And it's wild what that kind of has done for how Musk treats the individual and how he treats the best way to communicate with them.
Nice. Well, Nick, thank you for that. That's a great perspective. And I wanted to say thank you for telling the story of kind of Pura Vida, and also kind of what you've kind of done with the, you know, the whole service and support kind of function over there, and the success that you've had with it today. I mean, and just thank you for sharing your time and your experience with us today. That's been awesome.
Oh, my pleasure, Adrian. This was a blast, and I think what you do is wonderful, and I look forward to more opportunities and listening more to your podcast.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.